Welcome back to the City Current Radio Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're honored to be with our next guest, our good friends and City Current partners who help us find the best speakers when it comes to all of our events. We're here with Richard and Angela Schelp. They are the co-owners of Executive Speakers Bureau. And Richard and Angela, let's start. How are you two doing?
Doing great. Glad to be here, Jeremy. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thanks. Excited about what 2021 is going to bring. I know it's going to be a little bit different, and I'm excited about all the good things coming.
Yes, there is light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. We have a positive outlook moving forward for sure. Let's
definitely.
Start with some context, though. When you talk about Executive Speakers Bureau, give listeners an idea of what you do. I mentioned at the front end, you help us find great speakers, create these amazing events and experiences, but tell us what a Speakers Bureau does and talk about Executive Speakers Bureau.
Well, Executive Speakers Bureau, first of all, what I would say we do more than anything is we do a great job of matchmaking. We have organizations that we build great relationships with, whether those are big corporations, associations, universities, et cetera, and we match them up with outstanding talent for their meetings and conventions, whether that is a comedian, a motivational speaker, a business author, et cetera. We bring the two of those together, and really we're the source where a lot of those organizations wouldn't be able to find or get those individuals. We're able to provide them for them. And of course, we're added value to those entertainers and speakers because we're getting them opportunities they would never see. So I think that's the first part that I would start off. And I know you want to add some stuff to that.
And as you know, there's thousands and thousands of speakers out there. So it helps that we've done this for 27 years now, and we've seen so many of the speakers live, and we know which ones are great and which ones, and during this time, which ones are good virtually versus, maybe you want to wait and have them in person. So there's a lot that we can bring to the table as far as experience on our side to help with that decision making.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that really, to me, makes you all special is, one, we can throw you a name and you can almost immediately get back to us on their availability, their price, their topics. So you make it very easy for us to be creative and come up with names and then find out if it's realistic and what their availability is. The other one is, and you mentioned matchmaking, is making sure that it's a good fit in all those different areas, budget, all the travel, virtual versus in person. And so to me, that matchmaking really does play a valuable role both for the speaker and obviously for the event organizer. Carry that forward because, as Angela, you mentioned, the in-person versus the virtual. And obviously right now it's virtual. Right. Talk about what you're seeing in terms of the virtual world and how that's opening up new opportunities, but also challenges.
Oh, and we've got both. But as far as opportunities, I mean, it's been better than we ever expected it to be when this started out in March. And it's interesting, we've had so many speakers that have jumped right in and developed home studios and really rebranding themselves in the virtual market. And I think we'll see going forward, there's going to be very much a hybrid of in-person and virtual, especially as things start to open back up. But even I would say years to come, I think it's going to be a good option because we've noticed that some of the speaker fees obviously are less for virtual. So if somebody really wants a certain speaker, I mean, it's an option to have them virtually going forward if they can't afford the in-person.
Yeah, and what I would add is the solutions that we now are able to provide. There are some creative things that we've done as a business that I never thought we would do. And one of those things is actually us putting on events, us doing events ourselves, really offering up what I would consider free education for a lot of our clients and giving speakers exposure and us doing it. That never would have crossed my mind, but now it's happened because of virtual.
It has,
yeah, we'll
and
talk about it in just
fun.
a second, an event that you're going to host on January 25th. So we'll talk about that in a second. Talk about that aspect, because when you look at it now, I feel like it gives a lot more flexibility and control to the event organizers. And so whether that's a corporate event, a nonprofit event, a trade show, I feel like now, to your point, you have the hybrid once things get back in person, but the ability to leverage these virtual events and opportunities where people can be anywhere in the world in the comfort of their home or their office really is a powerful advantage. What's one or two tips that you would offer for those organizations that are doing virtual events or want to do virtual events? What's a tip?
If you're going to do virtual events, I think, first of all, when you're planning it out, when you're thinking about the opportunities and what you want to do, first you want to make sure that you're not just trying to copy that in-person event exactly. You want to take advantage of what the virtual event brings itself and the skills and the abilities of the people needed to make it a good session for those people in the audience. One thing that a person told me recently is you have to think about virtual in a way that's different than the way you think about in person. From a standpoint of in person, you're thinking about, let's please the entire crowd. When you're thinking about virtual, you want to be looking at pleasing one person at a time. And so that's one of the things that I would say is make sure you're not just copying an old in-person event and making it virtual. And what else would you say?
I agree. And I mean, just look at what kind of like cityCURRENT, what you guys have done. I think that you have taken your event, put it online, but you've still kept it so interactive. I mean, you look at some of the things you've done to keep it interactive and the, kind of the meet and greets at the end or the trivia at the beginning and just fun things that you've added in. And I love some of the Q&As, the chats, just to keep it all going and interactive. And I think that really makes a big difference when you can do those types of things in your event.
Also think about employing MCs in your event. Don't just say, hey, we're going to put a speaker out there. But as you know, with your own events, you act as the MC for those events. That is nice when you're doing it in person. It's necessary when you're doing it virtually.
It is. It is necessary.
Yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people are missing that.
Like putting on a TV show. I mean, that's the way I look at it. Is you're interacting through a screen, but it's very much like a film or a TV show. And to your point, you have to have a host and you have to keep it going. And you're talking to one person at a time. So that's a great analogy, even on that end. Talk about some of the hot topics, the trends. When you look at the hot topics for speakers right now, what are some of those hot topics?
I would say for me, the things that I'm seeing the most is change, leading through change, dealing with adversity, resilience, and diversity. So those are, to me, are probably some of my main ones that I'm seeing. What about you?
Yeah, well, yes, diversity has been at the top of the list since early summer, I guess, and it has continued all the way through, and it's not losing energy at all. Also, I would say stress reduction is a key thing. Right. There's even people asking about, there's a PTSD that's basically come from this COVID thing. That's important. Also, mental health and well-being, also a key thing that's coming about too. So we're seeing that. And then of course, leadership and general motivation, and those things are still valuable during this period of time.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, we've had people ask about, they've got employees that have been at home for so long now with their kids, and they just are having that stress that they're, how do we help our employees, as they know they've still got months to go. So we're seeing a lot of that.
What's been the feedback from the speaker side? Talk about your interaction on their end in terms of how they're navigating through this, because obviously it's a massive disruption to their income, to their business, but yet they're finding ways, like you mentioned, to create home studios and opportunities. So share a little bit of just their world in terms of how they're dealing with all of this.
Well, I think a lot of the speakers are taking it as a challenge to get to be better at what they're doing and actually to set themselves apart. There's some that may have been an average speaker, but now they put a great studio in. They have a fantastic background. They've learned how to speak virtually, actually better than they did in person. And suddenly they're a better speaker because of this. So I think some have actually posed it as a challenge.
Right.
I think others, it's been a very difficult thing for them because they had 100 gigs a year, and now all of a sudden they're going to make half the amount of money, and they're not sure how to go about doing it. They have trouble speaking to a screen versus an audience where they see the feedback. So there's some people that it's been a challenge for them.
It is. And I would say for the vast majority of the speakers, they find it more difficult to do virtual than it is in person. I think that the planning is harder. I think that, it's hard on the expectation side. There's a big difference on what the clients are expecting versus the speakers are delivering. And, we're having more prep calls. And I think it's been a lot more challenging for the speakers than they ever really thought it would be. But on the upside, they're very thankful to have the opportunity to have business at all.
Yeah. Oh, yes. But just one of the things I just thought about as you were talking about that is it's really interesting how some speakers have determined some really cool things that they can do, that all of a sudden they realize, hey, if I'm really close on screen and you have a big picture of me while I'm talking, that makes people more interactive. If I get them to engage with questions, the people in the audience are going to be much more excited. Yeah. If I use breakout rooms, it really helps an interactive session. So I think there's some neat things that they're discovering as they're going through these presentations that kind of excites them a little bit as well. So I think there's both things going on, Jeremy.
Absolutely.
I agree.
So let's talk about this event. You mentioned the ability on your end now to host events. And so you have a virtual event coming up on January 25th focused on diversity. So talk about this event.
This is unbelievably exciting because not only do we have 3 experts that we're very familiar with, Lenora Billings-Harris, who's been a long time diversity inclusion expert, Kevin Ahmaad Jenkins, who is an outstanding diversity and inclusion speaker and is really on the rise, and Kim Blue, who's an executive with Zoom, who we've sunk a lot of money into already. Right. So anyway, needless to say, the 3 of them, such a great focus, all different views of diversity, inclusion, unconscious bias, et cetera. And then the person there that's going to tie it all together is our moderator, none other than Stedman Graham. Yeah. So I've got to tell you, I'm extremely excited about the possibility.
I am too. And I agree. They've all got, different ways that they're going to address the topic. And I think it'll be good to, just to see the different sides of it and where they're coming from, and especially with Kim being on that corporate side. And, I think it'll be really interesting to hear.
And Kevin has more of an educational influence, being at the University of Pennsylvania. And so he's got a little bit more of that tie-in. So it really is diverse. And quite frankly, all 3 of them are excited to have Stedman as the moderator. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and I'm about to say, back to your point about having a host or a moderator, you've got an amazing one for sure. And I think to your point, when you have someone at that high of a caliber, he really can ask great questions, be the glue automatically. So it really removes the question that I'm going to ask you next, which is talk about how the preparation goes for this. So in other words, how are you kind of navigating and creating this on the back end with them? With Stedman, it makes it really easy where it's like, he's just going to ask some questions, but there's more to it obviously than that. So give us behind the veil of organizing this and making sure that all of those presenters and panelists are on the same page.
Our plan at this point is they're each sending us questions that they like to address the most. And so we'll take those questions, give those to Stedman, and then he'll kind of pick and choose through those and then give them out. So that's how we're going to make sure that everybody addresses their main topics that they want to cover.
Nice. But quite frankly, I don't even think the contents is big a challenge, as how tough the technical piece of all this is. Oh, yes. Yeah. So we've got Alex behind the scenes who is piecing together all of this as he's bringing in 4 people from 4 different locations. Right. That is going to be as well a challenge, really, to make this go off the way it needs to.
As we wrap up, talk about where everyone can go to access the webinar and the virtual event. And then obviously too, where can we go to learn more about Executive Speakers Bureau?
Great. If you want to sign up for the diversity event, you can go to diversityvirtualsummit.com, and there's a link right there to sign up. And then also, if you want to learn more about executive speakers, go to executivespeakers.com, and you can go to About Us, and it'll tell you all about our backstory.
Oh, there is so much great stuff on there. You can see all the dirty and ugly stuff about each one of us and all the beautiful people that work for us.
Yeah.
So it's great.
Well, like I said, you do make our world very, very easy. I can't say enough in terms of just how easy you are and how much of a pleasure you are, you and your team, to work with. So I highly encourage anyone who's looking for speakers and looking to have a great event to work through Executive Speakers Bureau. So Richard, Angela, thank you for all you do and for coming on the show.
Thank you,
Thank you, Jeremy.